Hey everybody, welcome to the Vegas Faces podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know that this is our first remote podcast episode. And my buddy Pablo Rodriguez is in studio helping us out, getting this thing off the ground, figuring out all the remote setting procedures and all that. So he's been a huge help. We did stand-up comedy together in Chicago, and now he's behind the scenes helping us with the Vegas Faces podcast. And I'm really excited for this episode. It's gonna be awesome. It's the first time that we ever did this, and I just want to give special thanks to Pablo for helping us out and getting this thing going on the remote side of remote podcast side of things.
It was my pleasure. It's a lot of fun working with Gavry and his whole team. And we're looking forward to putting this episode out for a while. We worked really hard on it, and we're looking forward to it.
Thanks again, Pablo. You are appreciated. All right, everybody, let's get into it.
From Las Vegas, Nevada, the entertainment capital of the world, I'm David Gavry, and this is the Vegas Faces podcast, where we talk with Las Vegas locals about what it's really like to live in the City of Lights. Whether you're living in Vegas, moving to Vegas, or just visiting Vegas and looking for new adventures, together let's discover the hidden gems that make Sin City the most visited place on earth.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Vegas Faces podcast, where we talk to the people of Las Vegas, what it's like to live in the entertainment capital of the world. I've got my really good friend Tom Garland in studio today, and this is the first ever time that we've done a remote podcast. So thanks for tuning in. And Tom Garland has just released a documentary. It is on Amazon Prime called The Arcade Gamer, The True Story. It is about a guy that, well, we're going to get into it, but Arcade Gamer set the world record. Really fascinating. And something special about Tom, I used to do stand-up comedy for close to 10 years. And in those days, you meet a lot of characters. And Tom was definitely a character that I met and became really good friends with. And because of Tom, literally, man, because of you, I did stand-up in Las Vegas on the Strip, downtown Fremont Street, ran a show, everything. So got to perform with Rob Van Dam and all kinds of cool characters. We got to go to the premiere of Tom Green when he got his residency here in Las Vegas. Like, we did a bunch of really cool shit. So when Tom hit me up and was like, hey, I just made a documentary, I was like, what? Okay, let's check it out. And it's really good. It's on Amazon Prime. It's about where Tom is from, small town Iowa. It's about the people of Iowa who they've got themselves a dream, and that dream is to be the world record chaser of these arcade games. We'll get all into it, but I'm super excited. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And Tom, welcome to Vegas Faces. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you, David. And I'm sorry to disappoint. I no longer live in Vegas. This is from my apartment here in Iowa. Thanks to the pandemic, I live here now, right? But I miss Vegas, man, and I miss being around you. So this is so cool and exciting, man, that you did this. And thanks for saying such nice things about the documentary. We worked hard on it, so I'm glad that it's out, and I'm glad people are enjoying it. It's cool that you watched it.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped. I want to get right into it. Like, what inspired the idea of a documentary from a guy like you? You've done acting. You're an actor. You're a stand-up comedian. You're a touring comedian. Like, you were actually one of the first comedians I met that was like a true like road dog, road comic. Like, you would be like, man, I just got out of the car from like driving 30 hours. I haven't talked to anybody, and so we would just talk for like 4 hours. You didn't talk to anybody like 2 days. And but like, how did you go from road comic acting work to all of a sudden, oh, hey, I think I want to make a documentary, and not just do I want to make a documentary, but I want it to be about this, which is, if you want to give like a brief summary of what it is. But to me, it was about this guy who just obsessed over these arcade games, like in these bars, and was like, I'm going to set the world record on, I think it was called Galaga, wasn't the game. And then I think it was Donkey Kong as well. Like, we're talking like old school Pac-Man machine arcade games, like not these like esports, like, you know, streaming gamers. Like, this is like, you got to get the bulky, big old machine and play for hours and hours. So where did that connection come from? Is it Iowa? Is it just because these are people that you know from where you grew up?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about on that. So originally, yeah, road comic, traveled 40 some states, played all the big clubs and all that sort of stuff. Everything from Elks Lodges in the middle of nowhere to the Las Vegas Strip and back, right? Eventually I get sick of touring. Like you said, I was driving all the time and going into Chicago a lot and stuff, and had a buddy from college say, hey, I'm moving to Vegas. Do you want to be my roommate? So I took a shot at that. I went out to Las Vegas. I was the opener there for Tom Green and the Strip at Bally's for a while. Had a great time doing that. You and I did a bunch of shows together, played all the big clubs there. And then the pandemic hit, and I tried to stick out the shutdown for a while with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. And so, we were living together, and they kept saying like, one more day. And that lasted for like, I think 8 months, and we stuck it out for about 6. And finally I was like, hey, what do you think of Iowa, where I'm from? Because that's open and I can go make money there and just get a regular job again. So what's funny is I hadn't had more or less a regular job in like whatever it had been, 10, 13 years. And then finally, we moved back to Iowa, but then there's that creative part of me that was just kind of stagnant. And so I was looking for creative outlets and stuff to do. And I actually went on a bachelor party with one of my good friends that I did a bunch of entertainment with. His name is DJ Dorrington, now DJ Bracker Dorrington. He's in the film. It's the guy's brother that we're going to talk about here in a second. And so I'm on DJ's bachelor party, and I'm hanging out with his brother Jordan. And his brother Jordan, we're pretty deep in some beers, right? And his brother Jordan's telling me like, I'm really good at Galaga, the arcade game. And I was like, that's cool. And he's like, no, like I'm the best in the world at it. And I have the world record at it and stuff. I'm really good. And I was like, that's interesting. I still have a camera because I do some film work as like a side hustle when I did all my entertainment stuff. And I was like, we should film that. Like we should film a documentary about that and just see if that goes anywhere. And so I was like, well, first thing is let's just start shooting, and we'll see where it goes, and we'll film on the weekends. So, cause I wasn't doing stand up when I came back, cause there's not much going on in Iowa. So I was like, you got to get on the road, kind of like what we talked about. So I was like, that doesn't sound like something I want to do. I just got married. So I'll just film this on the weekends, sometimes when I have time and when he has time outside of his job, and that sort of thing. So the gentleman's name is Jordan Dorrington. And Jordan Dorrington, like I said, had the world record in Galaga. He played for 14 hours straight on a stand-up vintage arcade cabinet, going like this for 14 hours in his kitchen. The arcade cabinet was in his kitchen to beat the world record. And then so in the film, we cover that, we follow that, but that happened back in like 2020. So to bring things up to speed, Jordan is a player and a connoisseur of all arcade games, pinball, all sorts of stuff like that. So he gets really into Donkey Kong, the original Donkey Kong, like 1981 stand-up cap, not like, what the kids play now, like Switch or something like that. This is the original Jumpman Donkey Kong, which is incredibly difficult. I can't get past what they call like the first level or the first board on it. I've been around it quite a bit as we were filming this. And Jordan is very good at it. And so he introduces me to another video game expert named Matt McGill, who's also very talented. And Matt just lives a couple hours away from us, but he has world records in arcade games and is kind of a legend in that world. And so we meet up with Matt, and together we all go to a tournament in Sherwood, Arkansas, where all of these professional nerds get together and they're going to try and break some records, man, at video games, at vintage arcade games. So I saw it as super interesting, and I saw it as something fun that I could really sink my teeth into, and a great creative outlet. And then I think at the end, the product that came out was something we're all really proud of that worked on it. And, I certainly was able to find the storyline and that sort of stuff too. So it was a really positive project too, which, from doing stand-up, it's like, it's not always positive. A lot of stand-up is negativity and stuff, but I felt like this was like, there's really no swearing in it. There's no sex, drugs, rock and roll, alcohol, anything like that. And so it was just a bunch of dudes playing video games and trying to be the best in the world, which I really enjoyed.
But what's extra cool about it is that it kind of showcases where you come from. Like every time you mentioned a different city in Iowa, it was like population 10,000, population 30,000. Like, and I'm from outside a suburb outside of Houston, where like still the population was like 200,000. Like, so I've never lived in a place where like, you know, less than 100, less than 50, less than 20,000 people. Like, what do you do when you get home from work other than the mundane chores and things like that? And like, did you even, I feel like what's really cool about entering any kind of world is that like I said earlier, like you meet characters. Like when I entered the comedy world, I did not know what to expect in terms of who I would meet and where it would take me. When you met Jordan and he was like, yeah, I'm legit the world record holder of this arcade game. Like, did you even realize that there was like a world of other, like in the documentary, he has like a mentor, like there's like a world of people who pursue the high score on these like vintage, you know, arcade games. Like I didn't know that existed. I just thought when you say the word gamer, I picture like these esports kids or like these streaming on Twitch kids or, you know, like whatever you call the multiplayer. I'm clearly not a video game player, but
no, that's cool.
Not,
and neither am I to a degree. Like I liked video games and stuff like that. You know, I've gotten really into it since I covered this and did this documentary to kind of speak on what you were talking about first with the being from Iowa and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was fun to shoot here and show where I'm from and show the cornfields and all that. What I thought was interesting, which I got really into, was when I first heard about this and started doing research on it, because I had to do research because I didn't know that world, was that I was like, man, there's a lot of this stuff, like, you know, Ottumwa, Iowa, we kind of nod to in the, which is about an hour, I think, from where I'm from. And that is where they first started tracking video game scores. And they call it the supposed video game capital of the world. And I didn't know that at all. And I would think that reasonably a lot of that stuff would take place in Tokyo or Korea or something like that. I didn't think that would even much take place in America, let alone, and even the esports game, a lot of that score tracking, you know, started with arcade score tracking and then later is now, you know, into that world and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool to research and stuff. But yeah, I threw the populations in there just to show like, it was so fun that all of this took place in small towns, you know, which I just thought was super interesting. And I think, you know, the comic in me, when people would hear that I was a comedian and stuff, when I did work the road, they would be like, oh, that must be so exciting. You get to travel all over the place. And I'm like, well, I just spent a weekend in Moorhead, Minnesota. And then last weekend before that, I was in Clinton, Wisconsin. So I'm not exactly, you know, seeing the big cities here, you know, to make money. And in their world, they're not making money. It's more, you know, the glamour of the ego and the other stuff that they get from achieving these high scores, the sense of achievement and stuff. There's really not money in it, and we get into that too. But yeah, again, of course, it takes place in small towns, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, like so what you said about, sorry to interrupt you, but what you were saying about how you thought, I would have thought the same, that it takes place in Tokyo or like Shanghai or like, I don't know, just a big giant stadium. And it kind of made me think about comedy too in that regard, because a lot of people think comedy is only Kevin Hart or only Joe Rogan or only Seinfeld, right? Like they see the tip of the iceberg. Like they think like, oh, you made it once you're like like selling out the Wynn or the Cosmo or, you know, a giant arena somewhere, Chicago Theater or wherever. And the majority of stand-up takes place in dingy little bars in small towns across the country. Like you were saying, Moorhead, Minnesota, like people don't realize that. And same goes for this gaming. It's like, you know, when they showed them at the World Series, I was like, oh shit, here we go. It's going to be a big giant arena. And it was like in some, you know, like abandoned strip mall. Yeah. You know, and I'm like, yeah, that's comedy too. That's like 99% of it. People don't see that part. They only see the small 1% where it's glamorous. Tom, what I'm fascinated by is this pursuit, like you were talking about. It's not financial. Like, what is that? And it comes from comedians too. Like, we just wanted to be, or at least, I don't know, my opinion, joining like the comedy world, getting into comedy. I just really wanted to be good at comedy. I wanted to be good at this thing that not a lot of people are good at. And it's really, really hard to get good at this thing. So like, is it like the same in the gaming world? Like, what are your thoughts on like, what is it about these pursuits that are not financial? It's like a lot of blood, sweat and tears, a lot of hard work, a lot of time spent without any financial payoff. There's just maybe it's the ego payoff. Maybe it's like, what do you think what do you think that is? Why do we spend so much time trying to get good at these kinds of things?
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, with the stand up, you know it from being around it. There's really no money in it until you get to the big bigs. I mean, there's enough to get you from one gig to the next or from one hotel to the next. And you can survive doing it. But most people, I think it's safe to say, do not get rich doing it until they get to the really higher levels. And there's levels to everything, right? But until you get to that upper echelon, you're struggling and stuff. I think with this in the arcade community, what I found a lot of parallels that was easy to navigate for me as to filmmaking and all that sort of stuff, where these guys, I mean, first it's just get good at the game, get used to playing it, get used to, like, I think I mentioned before, Jordan played Galaga when he beat the world record for 14 hours, even that, just the stamina to be looking at the screen and tapping the buttons and moving the joystick and be on for 14 hours is
and he's standing like 14 hours straight standing, no restroom breaks.
Well, so that's interesting. I think he, stand, sit, back and forth with that, probably whatever, if you probably sit too long, your leg falls asleep kind of thing. They film it on Twitch. Now they film the screen on Twitch, and then they have to show like the inner workings of the game to show that, like, here's the original board that's like the computer chips that are in the game, and say like, this is a legitimate Galaga. It's not messed with at all in any sort of sense. It's an original cabinet and all that sort of stuff. And then the film itself gets uploaded to Twitch, or back in the day to videotape and that sort of thing. So then the score can later be verified online by the naysayers and verifiers and that sort of thing, right? So, but he actually, we talk about it in the film, there is like a little, it's not a cheat code, but it's like a little tactic where you can park the ship on Galaga for about 10 minutes and take a bathroom break or have a smoke or do whatever, get a drink of water or something. So it's not, I guess, not necessarily a continuous 14 hours, but pretty close, right? And so anyways, the stamina that gets with that, and the same kind of in the stand-up world where you get into longer sets, right? Remember your first sets, you're doing like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Then, once you start working the road and doing bigger shows, they're like, do 35, do a half hour, do an hour, and whatever. And so then all of a sudden it's this stretch out stamina thing. And I think in the end, what I've finally learned is that in almost all forms of entertainment, you almost have to get known from something else first. Like you have to write a book, or like in your case, you have a podcast or something, and you get known from that. And then the appearance money comes later. So the stand-up, I consider, making an appearance, even though it is a performance art and that sort of thing. I think the business side of the entertainment industry sees that as an appearance, the same almost as a signing or an autograph meet and greet or something like that. I hate to reduce it to that, but again, and unless you're at the big bigs, unless you're Joe Coy and you're selling out arenas and stuff, then the average that's why comedians hawk t-shirts and stuff after their shows and stuff, because it all kind of comes down to an appearance. Well, they always have credits, right? Like, I'm known for this or I'm known for that. So one of the initial conversations with Jordan was, he was like, how do I have this world record, how do I capitalize on that? And I was like, well, in general, you have to be known for, just because you have the world record isn't even enough there. Like, you still have to be like, oh, but you've seen him on True TV, or and be known for that. So I was like, well, we're in a unique opportunity here, though, in that nobody has really covered your story. Like the local news and stuff had covered his story. But he had been to Australia and been asked to go to these tournaments and stuff like that. But nobody had really sunk their teeth into and dived into this story enough. What's interesting is that in the arcade world, first of all, when I thought of this, I was like, I'm a genius. Nobody's ever made an arcade movie. And I looked online and there's like 20 arcade movies, right? But what got really interesting was I watched every single one, and I did my research, right? And what I found was that I won't say names, but there's like 2 or 3 people, and they're arcade gamers, and they're in every single one of these video game documentaries, and it's all about like the same kind of clique that and the same. So in the stand-up equivalent of that would be like, there's a million comedy documentaries, right, and comedy specials. Imagine if every comedy special or comedy documentary was only about Robin Williams. Like, how weird is that? Like that's like, I love Robin Williams. I think he's one of the funniest people
but he's
ever.
The only one.
But if he's the only one, and I was like, there's so many other people that do this. So when we got with this, I said, okay, we are going to make something that's unique to us and our place where we live. And we're going to really dive into it. And we're going to show Iowa in a new light. We're going to show arcade gaming in a new light. And we're going to show new faces of this, the new generation of up and comers and other names that people aren't familiar with and stuff. And so watching it, not being a gamer, you probably didn't know that, but that was a little extra splash that we put on there too, that we kind of nodded to that stuff throughout it. Like I said, we mentioned Atumwa and that sort of thing. That's kind of where it originates. But we wanted to add that spin to it too and stuff. And I've told them the whole time, I'm like, I hope what you get out of this in the end is you have something to look back on that's notoriety and you can remember and say, oh, this was such a great time. But I said, I hope more than anything, you guys gain appearances and signings and that sort of stuff, because they are incredible at what they do. And you mentioned character. They're both characters, they're both kind of wacky individuals in a really good way. So that was kind of fun to be around.
Yeah. In fact, did you ever get into like the darkness, like if there is a darkness? And I say that because in comedy, there for sure is a darkness. Like I'll say Mary, my wife, she loves like TikTok, like comedians, but they're just like goofy people, guys and gals that post goofy videos on TikTok. And I remember telling Mary, and I was like, yeah, but I don't sense that they burn bridges with their family. Like, I don't sense that like they like alienated themselves, like, and lost all their friends in order to make those videos. Like, comedy gets dark. Like, you start to pursue this thing when people look at you like you're crazy because they're like, dude, you're going to make a living off of what? Like, it's the most ridiculous thing, most ludicrous thing ever to be like, yeah, I want to be like a professional funny person. They're like, fuck you. Like, you think like your friends think like, oh, you're funnier than us. Like, you're going to go do that for a living. Like, you get a lot of backlash, as you should, because I think like the pressure makes diamonds kind of thing. Like you kind of need that friction. And I'm wondering.
I like that you said, I'm sorry to cut you off. I like that you said, like you should. That's
like you should.
Too, like,
right. That's how dark it got. It was just like, yeah,
you should be like, oh, you think you're better than Sugarland, Texas? You think you're better than us, bro? You think you're better than the sugar? You're going to go to the big Chicago, Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, man. Dude. Like, so is there that in this gaming world? Because like everything that I saw, it seemed like everyone was pretty supportive. Like, yeah, go play 14 hours. And like, I want to know, like, were there any arguments with Jordan and his wife about like, you're going to play that fucking video game again? Like, you're going to like, you're not going to do anything else. Like, I wonder. And I wonder if you maybe saw that like behind the scenes, like, is there a darkness there like that these guys go through before they get the world record, before achieving the highest result?
Well, I think every form of entertainment, no matter what you're doing, if you're playing a video game for 14 hours and that's entertainment, or if you're a magician or an artist or a dancer or a comic or anything you're a writer or something arts based, it begins with delusion of some sense. It has to, right? I mean, you have to be a little delusional to be like, I'm going to do this thing that I know nothing about and I'm going to be good at it. And people are like, you're kind of weird, I think at the same time that almost benefits us in those arenas because, it provides the initial spark to get through disbelief and backlash, to get past that, be like, well, they don't know everything. I'm going to put the time in. And I think you and I have talked before because you had done at one point so many open mics in Chicago. No, I'm serious, and I'm not downgrading that. It was incredible, dude. And people were writing about it and stuff like that. I mean, it was. I'm not trying to sidebar us here, but how many open mics did you do at one point in Chicago? It was like 700 in a year or something. Do I remember that right?
Yeah, and it's funny because I was like really trying to. at the time, like there's no roadmap to this, right? Like there's no roadmap
Right.
to, like there's a roadmap to how to become a lawyer, how to become a doctor, engineer, accountant, whatever. But to be a comedian, it's like I met, you know, you just meet people that are further along, and they're kind of just like, hey man, just get on stage as much as you can. Like that's like pretty much how you get good at this. Like just get on as much as you can, and you'll just kind of figure it out. So I was like, fuck, okay, I'll just get on as much as I can. And then I think in 2 months back to back, I peaked. Like I could not beat. Like I just kept trying to beat my own record, and I don't know. I think it was like 78 in a month or something like that, which for Chicago was a lot.
Open mics in a month. Insane.
You know, like just times on stage to, you know, like 3 or 4 or 5 a night, depending on the night. But like for the city of Chicago, that was a lot. Whereas in New York, that's just the regular. Like that, everybody does that.
That is not the regular, dude.
No, you don't think so?
Anywhere? No, I think I've been all over the country. That's a lot of open mics. That's a lot of going up. You
just
know?
A lot of times on stage.
Oh, I respect that, man. That's crazy. And so kind of the same thing though. A lot of reps, a lot of 10,000 hours, you know, a lot of putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. And of course these guys have done that. You know, I was very fortunate in that, like when I started hanging around them and they started, you know, very graciously and being sweet and nice to me, letting me come into this world with them in you know, in this arcade community, they were both Matt and Jordan already there. You know, they're already very well respected in that arena. So of course there is, you mentioned his wife and stuff like that. Jordan's wife, very interestingly, actually manages the bar arcade here in town. So that's where they met and stuff. So she's way down with it. She's super cool with it. And I kind of, you know, show a little drama there with the wife, I feel like, but I tried to tie that in a nice bow at the end and stuff. But she's such a sweet individual, and she's very supportive of his lifestyle and knows that he's pursuing something that, you know, he believes in. Obviously we believe making this movie that it's a great pursuit and stuff like that. So that's really, you know, in the comedy too, it's like, yeah, you have the naysayers and stuff, but then you also have these other people believing in you. You know, I experienced a lot of people that were like, you'll never do that. And then I had other people that were like, you're the funniest person since Dave Chappelle. And I was like, somewhere in between there is the truth. Like, you're crazy too. Like, you know, I was like, aren't I just a decent utility feature comic? But, you know, whatever. So
Yeah.
Tom,
do you miss Vegas?
I do miss Vegas, man. There's so many cool things to do there, and so many, like, I miss every part of the city, dude. I really do. I just, you know, there's part of me that's like, I should have never left. There's part of me that wants to get back there. Being in Iowa for this project was an absolute blessing, because I think that the production value of this project came from being around these arcades, being in these small towns, being near these guys, and that would have probably never happened in Vegas. But did you know this, David, that there's actually almost every casino has like an arcade in it? Have you ever figured that out?
Did not know that.
Yeah. First of all, there's a really good one in Excalibur, right? At the basement of Excalibur, like in the level, if you're like coming on the little moving walkway, right? Which I really liked, because I was a big drinker when I was in Vegas. And so I'm like, I'm not walking in I'll just sit on this moving walkway. And then you're a good gambler. I'm not a very good gambler. So I would be like, I'm going to play for free drinks and stuff. But I would just scamble, you know, I'd just put 20 in, get my free beer, and then cash out. I'd be like, haha. But I'd still want to play games and do stuff while I was taking.
I'll interrupt you. I'm not a good gambler. I'm a good money manager. You're a good gambler. You're probably a better gambler than you are a money manager. So I would say that I never took the big swings to make the big wins. I was like, I'm just going to grind out a bunch of small wins, like a boring, like I'm probably the most boring gambler you'll ever meet. Whereas like the exciting ones are the ones that go for the home runs and eventually hit them because they go for it.
And that makes sense. I guess I wouldn't consider myself either. I am more of like a casino lurker, when I was in Vegas, where I'm just like, they're like, who's that guy and what is he doing? Like, they're like, oh, he was in a comedy show 4 hours ago and he won't leave. You know, like there is the mall. What is that called? It's Miracle Mile Shops then at Hollywood. And it has like a fake sky above it. It's like painted to look like the ceiling is to look like a sky. And I thought that was like so cool. I was like, it's like daytime. It's like I'm outside, and I would just be in there. And so one time I saw, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's what they want.
Yeah, no, I know. And they totally, like, I have whatever trait that is, that crazy comic trait that they just got me hook, line, and one day I'm literally in there. I was in there so long that I'm just like spacing out. And I saw a bird get trapped in the casino, and he's just flying against the fake wall. Like, and I was like, that stupid bird. He doesn't know how to get out of here. I was in the casino for like 45 more minutes, and I was like, I don't know how to get out of here. I was like, I am that bird. Like, that's me. Like, I'm just looking at a mirror up there. So
for sure.
But yeah, for sure. Anyways, they have arcades in the casinos. They're downstairs, and actually, I think with you're a poker player. That's smart. That takes intelligence, and it takes skill and craft. For the average slot player, over time, you are going to lose. They are going to slowly but surely chop you down a little bit. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to go downstairs and play Pac-Man. Like, I'm not going to play. Why am I playing Firelink? Like, let's go downstairs and play some Pac-Man. I'll take my beers down there and stuff. So it would be like me and like these sad casino kids that are down there, like, you know, the parents are gambling away their college fund, and I'm down there like playing Pac-Man with them and stuff. So I was always into that.
On a serious note, though, you're one of the only comedians that I really learned like the business of show business from, and I mean that. Like, a lot of the comedians that I became friends with were I learned a lot about the craft and how to get, you know, all the tricks on stage, like these little parlor tricks to get the audience to do this and to do that. But in fact, and Pablo too, Pablo, who's the producer of this right now behind the scenes, shout out Pablo. I learned a lot of business. And I think from you specifically, your background's like, it's like, I haven't met any other comic that has toured with the Jackass crew, opened for Steve-O, you know, Rob Van Dam, among many other names, you know, Tom Green. It's pretty cool. And it's cool because you honed in on the fact that like, there's a business to this. This is show business at the end of the day. And you never waited for, you know, Zanies or any of these clubs to like, you know, wave a magic wand and say, hey, you're our guy now. You were like, I'm just going to go and like create these opportunities. Same goes for this documentary that you just released. Like you're like, oh, I'm just going to do it, and then I'll figure it out as I go because I have some business savvy. So props to you on just like, I'm able to now apply that to, like, I'm in real estate now. I'm no longer doing comedy. I'm in real estate, but the lessons I learned on the business end from you in comedy, I'm able to apply to any other business. And,
well, thank you, dude. That's really like the kindest thing anybody's ever said to me. I really appreciate that. And I don't know, you know, I used to hang out with our mutual friend a lot, who's in Vegas now. Very funny, Keegan Buckingham. And Keegan and I would have this discussion all the time, whether I was more agent than comedian or more comedian than agent. And agent's a loaded term, just meaning that I sold and booked tours and that sort of stuff. But I got really into the business side of it. I did, and I really enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed, like you said, there's no necessarily roadmap to the entertainment business. So I've always found that interesting, like a little puzzle game that I get to kind of figure out as I go. And certainly filmmaking, I am very, very new to, in a sense. I have a little bit of background in it that I could have been too long of a story. So just, yeah, so it was, like you said, it was kind of run and gun, and we'll figure it out as we go. And I think it turned out, you know, really great, all things considered, that I didn't have the biggest expertise in it, but I did, you know, spend a ton of time in the entertainment business trying to soak that up like a sponge. And that was always super interesting to me, and introduced me to great people like yourself and your wife and great comics and stuff. And at the end of the day, like, you know, I don't know if I was the right guy to probably take business advice from. I'm living downtown Cedar Rapids, Iowa right now. So I don't know if that's really like if you read like the beginning of my story, you're like, he's going to do it. And then at the end, you're like, that was a bad idea, maybe. But
yeah, but let's flip it. Let's turn it into a positive, and not just to be corny, but like, do you think that maybe you had to go back to Iowa? Like, here's the thing. I'm also really into like Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, that type of stuff, to where like the hero eventually, he goes through this transition and then eventually ends up back home, having learned everything that he learned when he left home. So you're going back to to wherever what's the city you are in, Cedar Rapids?
I live right now. I say Cedar Rapids, but it's really Sugarland, Texas. I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Which is
population. What's the population?
There's probably people here are probably there's about 175,000 people that live here in Cedar Rapids, so it's a big small town. And one of my friends in Vegas, I was like, I'm going back home to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and he was like, how are things in Mayonnaise, Idaho? And I was like, I don't live in Idaho. It's not Mayonnaise either. I was like, it's a real city, man. And actually, I'll be 100% real with you. I love being here. I love Iowa. I never wanted to leave in the beginning. I wanted to do everything from Iowa. We were joking around right before we started recording that even when I played in Chicago and I went in and out of there for about 5 to 7 years, spending time on Keegan Buckingham's couch and hanging out with people like you and Bob Keane and crashing around trying to figure out the maneuver through that scene, and on my time off from tour, blowing every dollar I had made on tour to hang out in Chicago, thinking that was where I was going to make it and get seen, trying to play all those clubs and that sort of stuff. Eventually I broke through, but by the time I broke through, I didn't even really want it anymore. I never actually lived in Chicago, though. I would always drive in and out of Iowa. And there was different points when clubs would be like, I really only want to book people that live in town. And I was like, oh, I live in town.
Just moved.
I live here now. And one night this will be a throwback for you. More than one night, I slept in the Whip Theater. What was that little, it's like a little neighborhood. I can't remember what it's called. It's where all the police live.
Edison Park.
I slept in the Whip Theater in Edison Park, right? So that was, and one night Tony that ran it, God bless him, he's a great guy. But I was like, hey, Tony, can I sleep in the club tonight? I don't want to get a hotel room. I have to drive back and whatever. And he was like, yeah, you can sleep in the green room. And so everybody had left. I flipped the lights off, right? And then I go into the fridge and they had a beat and I crack a beer, right? It's like the first thing I do. And then my phone rings like immediately. And I was like, hello? And Tony's like, hey, don't be drinking my beer. And he's like, I got cameras in there. And I was like, damn it.
Stories like this that make those people, once they hit the big time, whatever you want to call it. But I don't know. I kind of feel like you had to go back in order to make this documentary, for instance. Like, you probably wouldn't have made this documentary had you stayed in Vegas during the pandemic.
No, I certainly wouldn't have. And like I said, we talked about that before. There is arcades in Vegas. Another cool thing in Vegas is the Pinball Hall of Fame is there. Have you ever been to that? It's really cool.
I have not heard of it, but haven't been.
All pinball machines and stuff. You guys doing this Vegas thing on why to move there, and so you should go check it out. It's really interesting and cool. A lot of history there and stuff. But I didn't want to leave Vegas, man. I loved Las Vegas. I loved the people there. I loved the city. I loved, 13 odd comedy clubs being in a 2-block radius from each other. I love the tourists and to perform there and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of it was money motivated, obviously, to come back here. But you're right. I mean, this documentary this story kind of falling in my lap was an absolute blessing. And then I had awesome people help me. Jordan and Matt and their families introduced me to that world and were very forthcoming and vulnerable in front of the camera and stuff. That was great. A friend of mine that was a road comic, Don Trenagle, now turned film producer, actually helped me finish it, came on as executive producer and helped carry the ball to the very end, helped me find distribution and all that sort of stuff. So we've been talking a lot about me and even about them, but Don was really an integral part of this as well. And yeah, man. And it's, what's cool is that since I've come home, I think people knew me a certain way before I left. And I think a lot of that came from, and you probably knew me in this sense too, when we were in Chicago. I know we spent time in Vegas together, but I was so fired up, I was like, I'm going to do it. Every day I felt like I was going like this, like I was climbing this hill and I was like, I'm going to get there, man. I'm really going to get there. And then now I kind of see that maybe that wasn't the whole point, that the whole point was to just find thyself or to that art is long and life is short, and just to even pursue something like that and to figure out the ins and outs of it is enough for me. And so to come home, I've had people hit me up, and I'm not trying, but my phone rings here and people are like, hey, I want you to come do this with me or that or this show or that show. And I'm like, nah, that's cool. That sounds fun though. That sounds neat. But I'm not as like hungry for some of that like open mic scene type stuff that, or like showcasey type stuff that I was before. I'm looking to do bigger, more concentrated projects such as this. So I really appreciate you helping me promote it.
Yeah, man, it's cool. It's cool to be part of the process, to know someone who's going through it. Like it's easy to like meet someone who's like already arrived, but then by then it's like they already have their friends and their people in place. Like they don't need new friends, but it's kind of cool to just like know people who are on the up and up with whatever the project may be, and to see it grow and to see it flourish. And I'm sure that's a whole nother thing to figure out. Like it's one thing to figure out how to shoot and edit a documentary. And then it's another thing to now, like, how do we get this out? I mean, just getting on Amazon Prime is impressive. It's awesome. Like, I tell friends and family like, oh yeah, I'm doing a podcast with my friend. He has a documentary on Amazon. They're like, oh, which like, like, especially when you're first starting out in comedy or whatever, they always want to know like, oh, are you performing at the Improv, or, like they need to hear a name that they recognize. And then even when I'm sure it was like, oh, hey, I'm, in your case, I'm opening for Steve-O from Jackass. Like I'm Steve-O's opener. I guarantee the next question was probably like, well, how much are you getting paid for that? Are you getting paid for that?
Yeah.
Like, it's never like it's never like you're doing good enough. Cause no matter what you do, it was always like, they hold it over your head. Like what, so it's cool to see that you've gotten this thing now, and now it's like, okay, how do we get it out there to as many people as possible? And then of course you brought up the Pinball Hall of Fame, which makes you think like that's a sequel, man. That's Arcade Gamer 2.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Pinball.
We have talked about spin-offs and different stuff we can do and see how far this one gets and stuff. I don't want to talk too much about that yet, but yeah, that's always the next thing, is to wheel and deal and be like, oh, what's next? That's the total entertainment brain. Don Trinagel that I mentioned and I are working, and a bunch of other people. The cast is over 100 people right now. It's crazy. Are working on an independent film that's shooting in Waterloo, Iowa, which is about an hour north of where I live. And that is a PG rated basketball movie. That's got like, adults and little kids in it and stuff. And that's like a narrative, story that Don wrote. That's really cool and entertaining, but it's like, it's funny, but it's also very PG and wholesome and that sort of thing. So we have been, I was actually working on that as I was working on this, and now I've kind of wrapped this up, and now it's kind of promo and press, but I'm spending almost, every weekend or so up in Waterloo trying to take that ball to the finish line with Don and stuff. So that's been really neat, and he's been super generous with his time and everything to get me involved with that. So that's cool. But what's funny, dude, is that you're so cool in that you're sitting here telling me like, oh, I respected this so much. It's like, dude, I respect you like getting straight and becoming a realtor. Like that's way more impressive to me than you're like, Tom came up with another entertainment scheme. You're like, dude, you're selling houses in Vegas. You and Mary made it through the pandemic there, dude. That alone, people that weren't in Vegas during the pandemic don't know what that was like. I don't know what you were exactly doing for work when that hit, but that was a crazy time, dude. That was insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I don't want to get like too into it, but we basically took on a house flip, and then that got me a job in property management with a plaza that happened to be literally walking distance from the house that we were flipping and living in while working on it, while remodeling it. And so when, because my first year here in Vegas, I was doing comedy with you, and I was trying to also do poker as like the income. Because like you said, you're not making money in comedy. Like you're busting your ass for like $25. So I was like, okay, if I could just like do poker in the daytime, like as a day job, as like just more like a money manager, not trying to hit big home runs, really just like grind out like a, if I can make like $200-300 a day, like, or even just on a weekly basis, like on an average kind of thing. Like that's kind of what my goal was. And then we got this opportunity as we're looking for a house together. We my dad's a businessman, as is your dad too, I believe. And so we're looking for a house, and my dad's like, hey, I'm just running the numbers here, and this house is very underpriced. Like, what's the catch? Go check this out, and let's if we have to come together and just you'll be the project manager, put this thing together. Let's at the very least remodel it. Mary had just gotten pregnant. So it was have the baby, and then after the baby, let's sell it. We're like,
okay. Congratulations. That's nuts, though.
Did not know anything about anything. Wanted to, people talk about remodels and how stressful they are and how they can break up a marriage and all kinds of crazy. Yeah. It's first world problems.
You've got your dad there telling you I can do this, this, and this. And you're like, okay, Dad, my wife's pregnant and I have $25 to throw in. So here's $25 and the condom broke. And so I don't know.
I really think it was his way of being like, man, stop doing this comedy poker shit. Maybe. It was.
And maybe that's not bad, dude. It's, I actually did step away from, me, dude. I was always on stage every night, multiple times a night. This is maybe an exaggeration, but I don't really think it is. I think in Vegas, I was doing at least minimum 14 sets a week, across the city when I was doing it. And I was working full time as a bartender on top of that, and different things. I worked in film production and stuff there too, a little bit, doing camera guy stuff. And that's kind of gets me back into the film thing. But, anyways, man, that is crazy that you guys were. I respect that.
I think it was just luck. It was true luck. Seriously, because this flip was it came out of nowhere, and we were like, okay, the deal is we remodel it, we live in it, but we have to go through the hiring of all the laborers and all that type of stuff, and get this thing every square inch of this house
with it, and
needed
something. That happened in 2020.
So that was middle of 2019, leading up to 2020. After we had finally remodeled the house, and I was like, I'm applying for jobs at this point, and I'm like, okay, but also I'm working 7 days a week, 12-hour days, working with these construction workers, not even doing the work, but just overseeing it.
Yeah,
because my dad, he's like, why am I going to pay a contractor? Why don't you just go out and hire these people? And I was like, huh?
Yeah, you have to get hire. Figure out
yeah, I got to bring 10 door guys over and get me door quotes on a front door and on a patio door. It was a nightmare, but also it kind of gave me a PhD in home remodels, to where now I'm like, let's buy some land and build something like that. I haven't done that before, but that led me to a property management job that I just got super lucky in, because I got hired a month before the pandemic. And it just so happened that in this plaza that I'm managing was an office building. So all the people in that office were deemed essential. But everybody else in that plaza was out. There's a salon in that plaza. There was a spa that was shut down. There was one of those little casino bar restaurant building type places in there. All the restaurants in the plaza were done. And so I just happened to be in this office building. So for me, though, not having a normal job, while everyone was home not working during the pandemic, I was like, this is the first time I'm actually working a 9 to 5.
That's weird. That's freaky, man. That's so cool.
I was like, I shouldn't be home, because I kind of lived the pandemic lifestyle for 10 years. So that's kind of how, and then from there we were just like, what are we doing not getting a real estate license? We should be licensed at this point. So it all just kind of led to that. But it's cool. It's cool touching base with you and even Pablo behind the scenes, how we all we're still in it in our own way. And I feel like starting this podcast, it was just kind of I want to do something on my own time. I'm at home, I'm talking to you, I'm doing it at my pace. And it seems like your documentary, you're doing it at your pace. You were saying you get hit up, oh, come do this showcase or whatnot. You're you're kind of now just picking and choosing what you want to do, what makes you happy. And I think that it shows in your creativity better than when you're trying so hard to oh, I just want to make it. I just want to make it. You don't even know what make it means. And now it's I just want to do something that makes me feel good, that vibes with what is in my head, in my vision, and then just seeing it come to fruition and forget all the rest of the noise.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's actually freed me. I'm performing still. I do stand up here in town, and a little bit of road stuff every now and then. And I take about, one show a week, maybe two, if that, on a busy one, and that's not even like anything, compared to what we used to do and what I used to do and stuff. So but I've actually found that it's freed me up a lot to, like, I'm not obviously relying on the money from that. Like I used to, is when I toured and whatever, that was what I did for a living, and helped the celebrities that you mentioned before do their tours, and then obviously got a cut of all that. And so that was my job. And one of the smarter things I ever did in entertainment was I really learned a lot doing that. But when I basically got to a point where I was in a different city, and this is maybe like circa 2016 or so. I'm in a different city every night, more or less. I'm traveling about 6 to 8 hours a day. I'm not talking to anybody other than I do my show, and it's mostly couples in the audience. They're like, "You were great." And I'm like, "Huh, bye." And then I'm back to the hotel and back on the road the next day with a bar in between there somewhere. And that just became such an abusive lifestyle where I lost friends, I lost family, in touch with family and that sort of thing. I couldn't have a relationship. And I really couldn't do projects like this either, because everything was just spent traveling, and you're not even writing that much. I was doing a lot of crowd work and stuff, but I didn't know that I was like, I should be filming this crowd work and get David's wife to watch the crowd work, and then I would be Matt Rife. I would be Fat Rife now. Right? But anyways, hindsight's 2020. But I left the road and decided, I'm going to take a change. And Vegas is kind of that way. Vegas is kind of second chance city for everybody. I don't know to say that, but it is, and it was a total reset for me. I think some people have this idea of Vegas as like, ooh, that's a scary place, or bad things can happen there. And it's like, great things can happen there. It's a really great place to go get fresh and reset yourself. Everybody is from all over the country, all over the world, and they're all trying to do the same thing there, is get a fresh start. And so moved out there, and then was able to meet who's now my wife, who's a great person, and you guys obviously have spent some time around too. It was very supportive and everything, and I think if I would have never done that, then that's kind of leads me here. Otherwise I think I would have come back to Iowa with my tail between my legs, but I didn't. In that I come back home and everyone's like, I had a call from a guy that used to book me in Iowa, and he goes, "Hey, I saw that you moved home." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I'm proud of you, dude." And I was just like, just that little bit, like I barely told anybody about that, but it was just like, I did feel accomplished and stuff, that knowing that I'm from, BFE nowhere, and was able to get out there and bang with the best of them and stuff, and throw down, and and you did too, man. I mean, we put up a fight with them and stuff, and that's fun, so
yeah. I think for me it was like, I just want to do this thing that all these people think I can't do, and I'm sure maybe for you too. And also, coming from a small town, like, not many people like make it out of the small town. There's a lot of fear involved. There's a lot of like, I don't want to leave my comfort zone. Like, you have to like leave your tribe. Like, you have to leave, like, your drunk friends that you party with all throughout high school or college or whatever. Like, you have to leave that comfort zone and then just insert yourself into a world that like nobody gives a shit about you. Like, nobody, like, and you got to navigate, and that's a freaky thing to do. Most people don't do that. So the fact that you left, you did your thing, like you, like you say, you ran with the best of them. And now that you're home, you've got a completely different perspective than most people that just stay there their whole time.
Yeah, which has been fun. And, when I first started stand-up, I started here in Iowa, in this area, and it would have been about 2010. I'm like 22 years old at the time. And I really was at kind of a crossroads where I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. And I thought like public speaking is the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing anybody can do. So I want to do the hardest form of public speaking, which is also a delusional thought, right?
Yeah, just make people laugh all the time, like just nonstop laughter.
And there was a comedy club. And there was a comedy club here locally, like a little weekend club, and so I spent a lot of time around there, and I wanted to soak that up like a sponge, and that's what I wanted to do. And then once I got further into it, I realized like, okay, it's no big deal to speak in front of people. It's not even a thing that enters my mind, right? And then it became more like, I want to become self-aware, of how the audience perceives me and how I perceive, and be able to have conversational play with them that's deeper than just surface level dick jokes, and so that kind of got into it. And then, then when I get further into it, then that self-awareness can kind of get into like, the business side of it, where like, I'm not being self-aware enough about the drink sales and how the show is promoted and then whatever. And then you become so self-aware that you're like, actually the new comedy perspective is I'm going to flip this house and I'm going to hire all these contractors. And this is the comedy club and whatever. And you're like, my wife is pregnant, but she gets it and stuff, and so that's where we end up. Right. And then I'm like hanging out. I was in the car. You watched the movie, right? I just bullshitting with. I appreciate it, dude. We're in the car. We're driving to Sherwood, Arkansas for whatever it was, like 17 hours. And I was like, son of a bitch, I'm doing it again. I was like, I'm fucking back on the road, dude. I was like, this is crazy. So
that was to the world. That was to like the world championship or the World Series or the highest.
It was like their version of the World Series of comedy, right? If you ever did that, but it's called Klash. And it takes place in Sherwood, Arkansas every year. They just did it again recently. And this didn't make the documentary in time, but Matt McGill, that's in the film, won his division this year. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't get that in the film but we didn't know, and we were ready to rap and all that sort of stuff. But Matt went down there and took home a big check this year and a trophy, which was pretty cool. And so props to Matt, and Jordan went back too, and again he can bang with the best of them. It's you saw how that ends up, and that was cool too and stuff. But so they like the guys that runs it is just a great individual, and he's got a great arcade there. It's called the Vortex Arcade, and we talked earlier about like, is there this darkness in that? There's not. That world is very like super supportive, and that like guys are like, and it's a very frustrating thing, maybe like golf or something, or I guess like stand up, but they're like playing the game, right? And then they're like, and they're freaking out, and then all the guys behind them are like, you're doing great. It's like really supportive. They don't have like hecklers like we have, right? But what I did find is they get very technical about like, well, if you're on the third setting of the second level and then you did, then it doesn't technically count. And I'm like, who gives a shit? My guy just played for 14 hours, man. He's the best there ever was, and I'm like propping him up. I'm like, you've seen him on what, like a comedy show. But it's like there's not that hype. There's not credits and stuff, and they're all very humble and whatever, but there's similarities, but of course differences too.
Before I forget, Tom, when you say Vegas, it's so different from everybody else I've ever met, because it's like Vegas. And I was just sitting there, I'm like, oh, that's so fucking cool. I was like, and then you kept doing it. There was like one sentence where you said it twice, Vegas and Vegas. I'm like, oh, but I kept wanting to say it too, and I couldn't mute my mic, and I was like, oh shit, this is the best thing ever. And it literally brought me back to the little time I've spent there when I was visiting Gavri, and then I went to the Grand Canyon. And it was just that vibe that starts at like, once the sun goes down, it feels like it's constantly 5 a.m. or like 4 a.m. Yeah. And it's like everybody's just kind of mellow, but everybody's having a great time, but it's just like cool. And then every time you said Vegas, I'm just like, oh, I fucking love the way Vegas. And it was so
I
different.
do say it weird. You're not the first person to tell me that, and I've like tried to learn, and I just gave up.
No, don't.
It was cool. It was like a professional documentary, to where I'm like, man, this guy watches documentaries and studies like the pacing and like how just the positioning of like where they're supposed to look, and like how to get these people who aren't actors to like just be themselves and to just be honest.
Did you study filmmaking before?
I did a little bit. I studied, so when I went to college, I studied broadcast journalism. I went to college for 2 years before I dropped out to do stand-up, and then went and pursued that. And in between dropping out and studying at the college and whatever at the University of Iowa, we had a student television station, and I worked at the student TV station and used a bunch of the equipment there and stuff. And then I had an internship at the local news station here where I shoot, but all of that was sports. It was all sports photography and that, which is kind of similar, I guess, to the, I guess you could call that a sport, but it's not. But, and then I literally didn't touch a fucking camera until I moved to Vegas, like 10, 12 years later. And then they had a job. I was looking for a job. When I moved out there, the first job I had was I was working at a strip club as a DJ. And I was like, I was like, this is so sketchy, man. I can't say, like, I thought it was going to be fun. It wasn't, it was just scary. And I was like, I got to get out of here. One of these guys is going to fucking kill me. And then the Golden Knights, the hockey team, they were like, hey, we're looking, they had like a Craigslist ad or something for camera guys for the in-house broadcast. And so I was like, I'll just apply. And they were like, have you ever filmed hockey before? I was like, amateur hockey, like club hockey in Iowa. And they were like, good, because nobody out here has ever fucking filmed this shit because there's no ice here and whatever. And so they hired me, and then I did that. I did WNBA there. And so it's all for the Jumbotron. And so you do like Kiss Cam and that's what. You know, and
you're up in the bleed, like you're up high.
You're up high shooting down. Yeah. You know exactly. Yeah. So you're up high shooting down and stuff. So, but dude, I really did. You said watch them. I watched every fucking thing there is to watch about arcades and arcade gaming and all that sort of. And so I've become a fan of it and become around it and whatever. But yeah, I really put the time into to know what we were talking. Yeah.
I don't know if I told Gavry this before, but Tom, you'll appreciate this, especially with that WNBA talk. So coming out of college, the summer between my junior and senior year, I was like, I just wanted to make those. This is very low low dreams I had coming out of school.
Oh, that's cool.
But I was like, all I wanted to do was make those NBA Jam like VHS like music videos. I'm like, that's all I want to do. And I was like, how do you do that? So one day I'm like, I was watching a Bulls game here, and then at the end I'm watching the credits, and there's some guy's name comes up for video coordinator. And so I write the name down, and then like here we are in the summer before senior year, and I just call the Bulls, and I go like, and they're like, hi, world champion Chicago Bulls. And this is like 2001. I'm like, you can let that go. Like we're not winning any title. We haven't won a title in a while.
World champion Chicago.
Yeah. And so I just go, I go, hi, can I talk to Craig, whatever his name was? And then they're like, sure. And then they transfer me. I was like, whoa. Because I thought it was going to I thought I was going to have to like get old, like, who are you? Why? Who do you look
like?
No problem. And then all of a sudden I got like whatever time is left between the minute they connect me with him and he picks up the phone to figure out what I'm going to say. And I'm just like, and I just went straight honest. And he goes, hi, this is Craig. He has like a half a sandwich in his mouth. And I'm like, oh, hi, man. My name is Paul Rodriguez, and I'm a senior at University of Tampa. And I really want to work with the NBA and making videos. And I was wondering if you had like 5 minutes to talk a little bit about what you do and how you got to be there. And he's like, yeah. We talked for an hour and a half. Okay.
Wow.
And then he goes, and he set me up with the guy in Orlando. And I went to school at the University of Tampa. And he hooks me up with this guy in Orlando. He goes, call this guy, and then he'll set you up, and just do that. And when you're done, you have a lot of experience in editing, and you'll just be making stuff, and just so you know how to do it. You can get an NBA logger job there if you can figure out how to drive an hour and a half. And I go, okay. So I go and actually end up getting an internship with Tampa Bay Lightning. And then that year's over. I come home, and I don't have any job offers. I wanted to go into housing for university, and so then I call him, and I just go, let's see if he has anything. And then he goes, I call the Bulls, and they go, hi, world champion Chicago Bulls. And I go, Craig, whatever. And then he goes, yeah. I go, hey, Craig, how you doing, man? I don't know if you remember me, but I talked to you a year ago. And he goes, yeah, I got your thank you card. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I just
you sent him a thank you card.
Yeah, as soon as I hung up the phone, I ran to this store down the street, wrote him a thing, sent it right away. And I remember, so he just goes, hey, listen, funny that you just called. I just got out of a meeting for I just got approved for a budget for interns. And if you want, you're number one on my list. And I was like, yeah. And then I was like all set. And then I realized like I had just got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. So I needed insurance. And I call him back. I go, do you guys have insurance? And he's like, no. And I'm like, oh, I need insurance. So he's like, all right, it's not going to work out. Good luck to you though. He goes, you got a good head on your shoulders. Like, go after this. Like, it's going to work out. And I go, cool. And I hang up, and I end up going, towards housing, and I end up being in higher education my whole career. But the whole time, I'm always like, I really liked editing and video. And so when the pandemic hit and we started teaching online, all this shit, as well as like making videos and tossing them into my classroom on this system so that I can drop in videos and talk about whatever, just really fired me back up into it. So it was like, when you're talking about like, WNBA and hockey and all this stuff, it's like, that's exactly how it happens. It's just like, can you do this? Yeah. Okay. Do this. And you just gather all those skills and then you just show up at the next spot. It's never like, here's your office and, you're here for the next 20 years. It's not like
Right. And then so much, and obviously I was the same thing. It's all non-union, so there's no benefits and stuff. And they were like, I remember the nights were like, it pays $40 an hour to film for the night. So I was like, $40 an hour. And they're like, the game is 1 hour. And you're like, oh shit, well, that's not good. Then what the fuck am I doing?
I hope it's overtime.
So no, I would literally, they would be like, guys would be like, whatever. And I'd be like, I'd be rooting for the other team, right? I'd be like, come on, motherfucker, let's go. Overtime, baby. Let's go. I'm already here. Let's do it, right? And they had a bunch of nail biter games, and everyone would be like, oh, in the crowd. Yes, let's go. It's like then it got to, they were like, the same company that did that, I was like, I need more hours. You guys are fucking killing me. And they kept moving shifts around, and so you only get certain games and not the other game. Because they had a bunch of people and stuff. And they're like, oh, this guy's been with us forever, Tom. You're new. And so I was like, do you guys have anything else? And they were like, no, all we do is this and stagehand. And I was like, I'm a stagehand. I can do stagehand. And I didn't know what that was at all, right? And they were like, well, that only pays $20 an hour. And I was like, fucking fill me up with that too. And then that's like a real hustle too. And so then I started doing the stagehand shit, which I thought was like you bring someone a microphone or something like, and it's not. It's like arena stagehand is like we would setting do up. Like you have. Yeah, you set up. So it's like UFC would fight there, and then we would build the UFC ring, which is like very labor intensive. And then you do that for 12 hours, and then they don't want to give you overtime. So you go home and sleep during the fight, and then you come back and you tear it all down. Oof. And so you're like tearing it down, but like people don't give a fuck. So they've like thrown Gatorade bottles and beer on the ground and popcorn. So you're like stepping over that, like trying to carry this shit. It was a nightmare, dude. But again, it was this, it's like you take what you can get to stay around that sort of stuff. And I think that's totally commendable, dude. It's neat. And
yeah.
Do you act, Tom?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, last question. Do you act?
Like acting, like
like an actor,
TV
like
show. I have an IMDb. I've done a bunch of like shitty D-list indie movies, like the one that we're filming right now that I was talking about. Like I'm an actor. It's a G-rated basketball movie, and I play like the fat, out of shape junior high basketball coach, and I'm like breaking clipboards and like drinking a big gulp and like screaming at kids, and then I run like a killer and try and show, and I can't touch the line and stuff. So I usually do like bit parts and stuff, but not like, I don't consider myself a thespian by any sense,
Okay. No, it's just you have like great character, like in in the stories you were telling. I was like,
oh, thanks, dude. I appreciate that. Yeah,
awesome.
I gotta thank both of you for just like this is like a new excitement, like this whole like I don't know what we'll do with this. Like I hope that we do more of these. Tom, happy to have you back on. Whenever you have,
thank you, dude. This is too cool.
Thing to, or a next breakthrough of some sort or whatever. But it's cool that to have met both of you because of comedy, and then through that, going through the ups and downs of it. And then I feel like we're all now at this place where it's like, now we just want to do some shit that is like true to ourselves. And it just, at the end of the day, it's at our pace, however which way we want to schedule it and do it. And we're still maybe chasing something, but it's more about the craft of it and like making it like the best that it can be, as opposed to just like, chasing this thing to nowhere. It seems like it's like you're chasing your tail or something. Like all the mics that I did, it was like, I got to get there. Like, what is there? I don't know, but I got to get there. And it's like that obviously helped build like the skills, but now it's more about like, oh man, I just want to like do something that like makes people feel the way I feel about this certain thing. Tom, what are we missing in terms of, we can check it out on Amazon Prime. Where else can we check it out? Where can we check out all your stuff? How do we keep in touch with you? How do people find out about you?
Yeah, speaking of really shitty technicalities where someone's like, oh, actually, there was a guy recently, is a friend of mine too, which was kind of surprising, but I put up a post about the film and I said, and again, I'm not necessarily a filmmaker, right? I'm a comedian with a video camera that made a movie. And I said, hey, my movie, Arcade Gamer, movie made by me and Don Trinagel and this wonderful crew of video game, savants, is now on Amazon Prime. And he shot back at me and he goes, actually, it's on TVOD or some shit like that. Cause he was like, it's not Prime. And I want to establish it's not Prime in that you can get it for free with your Prime subscription. You have to rent or buy it. You can rent it as low as 99 cents on the thing. So, so that's out there. But yeah, it's
I say Amazon. Just give the man 99 cents. See his documentary. Hey, Tom, what's your Instagram?
My Instagram is, I should probably change it. It's Tom Garland. My name spelled out TomGarland, LV, as in Las Vegas, right? It should probably say like Iowa or Washed Up Road Comic or something like that. But it says Tom Garland LV from when I moved out to Vegas. You can see there's my stand-up clips. And here's a review that came out today for Arcade Gamer. And if you scroll down a little bit, there you go. You see my wife's on there too and liking my stuff, which is great. And there's Josh Prey. He's a viral comedian that we just did a show with. And there's on the bottom left-hand corner there, the art for the film that says Arcade Gamer, the true story. You can click on that. And yeah, that's cool. And the guys, yes, that's how excited we are for this thing to come out, man. And
Tom, seriously, thank you. Like, I'm happy that we got to catch up. It's really nice to talk to you. I'm happy that all that we have done with your documentary and even with this podcast that we started this year, like it has led to this conversation. I think it's awesome.
Thank you for reducing your podcast to this, because I have watched your podcast to it on Reels and stuff, and you guys were like, I don't even know. But I really appreciate it, dude. Thanks for humoring me. Thanks for promoting this. Arcade Gamer, the true story. It's out now, and I wish you guys the best, man. And I probably would move back to Vegas, but I don't know any realtors, so I don't know what to do with that. I'll give you a call if that ever comes up.
You got it, man. Sounds good, Tom. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you for subscribing to Vegas Faces on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok under the name Gavry Group. That's Gavri Group. Thanks, everybody. See you at the next episode.